The unexpected gift that united our family, he brought forth his substantial instrument and commenced. Before we plunge into the gripping tale that awaits us today, a brief note. More than 90% of our audience enjoys our videos yet hasn't hit that subscribe button. If this content resonates with you, take a moment to click that subscribe button and activate notifications to stay updated with every new post. If this tale captivates you, be sure to show your appreciation by liking the video. It truly makes a difference for us. Rachel here, and I have shared over 14 years of marriage with my husband, Mark. Our paths crossed in college, a tale often recounted at reunions, evoking warm smiles and nostalgic reflections. In those days, he exuded charm, possessed a sharp wit, harbored grand ambitions, and seemed unwaveringly confident in his direction. I was the more reserved individual, intent, gentle in speech, inclined towards a sense of steadiness. We complemented one another in ways that felt right in that moment. We tied the knot in our youth, perhaps a touch too early. I was merely 23, while Mark was 25. In those formative years, we navigated a landscape of rented apartments, student loans, ramen dinners, and the occasional squabble over the dishes that needed washing. Yet, amidst it all, we cherished one another, or so I believed. As we approached our mid-30s, the landscape of our lives had transformed. Mark had forged a prosperous path in the world of finance, while I had chosen to pause my own journey to nurture our two children, Sophie and Lucas. Initially, I found myself at ease with that decision. I convinced myself that being present for the children was a noble endeavor, that my unwavering presence in their lives held greater value than any salary could offer. Yet, gradually and almost imperceptibly, I began to lose fragments of my essence. The days started to meld seamlessly into one another. In the quiet of early mornings, the ritual of packing lunches unfolds, followed by the familiar routine of school drop-offs. Grocery lists are crafted with care, meal preps become a necessity, and late nights stretch on, filled with the echoes of a busy day. Amidst the whirlwind of Mark's business trips and the relentless cadence of board meetings, our conversations drifted away from the things that truly mattered. Dialogues evolved into progress reports. Embraces evolved into rituals. The warmth of intimacy waned, supplanted by the practicalities of family existence. I couldn't hold him solely responsible. We allowed the space between us to expand. Yet, what pained me the most was the profound sense of being overlooked. Then, in the spring of last year, a transformation commenced. It was at that moment that Noah returned to the house next door. He had spent his childhood just 2 houses away, the sole offspring of the Learys, who had been our neighbors for many years. Noah came to mind as a lively, spirited child, perpetually dribbling a soccer ball or cycling alongside a group of other boys. Upon reaching the age of 18, he departed for college in California, and for years, his presence became a distant echo in our lives. However, following the death of his mother, he returned at the age of 23, newly graduated and tending to his father, whose health was failing. When I first laid eyes on him once more, he was busy unloading boxes from a U-Haul. As I was pruning the hedges in the front yard, there was a fleeting moment when I failed to recognize him. He stood tall, with broad shoulders, exuding that effortless confidence that often accompanies youth in their 20s. His lips curled into a smile upon catching sight of me. "Mrs. Owens?" he inquired. I chuckled softly. "You must refrain from addressing me in that manner. It makes me sound ancient," he said with a grin. "Apologies. Rachel, then?" That was the beginning. A mere smile, a name, a rekindling of familiarity. In the days that ensued, our paths would cross frequently. He would tend to the lawn for his father, take their dog for walks, and occasionally sit on the porch, engrossed in a book or chatting on the phone. We exchanged the customary niceties that neighbors often do, discussing the weather, sharing news, and voicing a mutual grievance about the delays in garbage collection. Nothing out of the ordinary. It was during the height of summer that our dialogues began to stretch into the evening. One particular afternoon found me grappling with a malfunctioning sprinkler head in the backyard. Mark was absent, as he often was, and I hesitated to summon a plumber for what seemed like a trivial issue. Noah spotted him from his porch and approached. "Need help?" he offered. After a moment of uncertainty, I gave a slight nod. It's quite the ordeal. I've been grappling with this for 20 minutes now. He knelt beside me, his hands deftly manipulating the pipe. I observed him, captivated by his concentration, his patience, and a hint of amusement at my vexation. In mere moments, the sprinkler coughed and sprang back to life. "There," he remarked, wiping the soil from his hands. "Not so hard." "Easy for you to say," I chuckled. In that instant, a shift occurred. It lacked the flair of drama or the clarity of the obvious, yet I sensed it deeply. A delicate change in the atmosphere whenever he entered the room. He would wave as he spotted me tending to the garden, lingering a moment longer in our conversations, inquiring about my well-being with a sincerity that transcended mere pleasantries. And I discovered that my response was driven by more than mere politeness. There was an underlying force at play, something I was unprepared to label. Anticipation grew within me at the thought of our next encounter. Whenever I baked, I would always make sure to bring some extra for him and his father. As I strolled outside, my eyes would drift toward their porch, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. It lacked any semblance of romance. Not at this moment. I reassured myself that it wasn't. It was a blend of focus and compassion. Someone recognizing my worth beyond my contributions to others. Then, one fateful afternoon in late August, an event occurred that shifted the balance. The sun blazed overhead, casting a warm glow as the children gathered at a friend's abode. As I lounged on the porch, sipping iced tea and engrossed in my book, Noah approached, a folder clutched in his hand. "Greetings," he remarked. "Would you mind if I tapped into your thoughts on a particular matter?" He shared that he was in the process of applying to graduate schools and sought feedback on his personal statement. I felt a warm sense of appreciation. He recalled that I once taught English before I decided to stay home. We lingered for more than an hour, delving into his essay, aspirations, and dreams. He absorbed every word, posed thoughtful inquiries, and restored my sense of significance. After a moment, he reclined slightly and remarked, "You ought to continue this, Rachel. Instructing, I mean. You're too smart to not be out there." I glanced at him, taken aback. "It's been years. I wouldn't even know where to start." "Well, you'd excel at it. That's obvious." It wasn't merely the words themselves, it was the manner in which he uttered them, sincere and unguarded, as if he perceived something within me that I had long since buried. That night, sleep eluded me. His voice echoed in my mind, and I recalled the way he gazed at me, not with pity, nor with mere politeness, but with a deep, authentic admiration. It awakened something within me that I had long kept hidden. In the weeks that followed, our paths crossed more frequently. He would drop by with his dog in tow, inquire about my garden's progress, and present me with a book he believed would capture my interest. Each visit seemed to carry a purpose, a subtle pretext for our growing connection. Yet I believe we both understood the reality. We never ventured beyond the physical boundaries. However, the emotional boundaries? They faded more swiftly than I was ready to accept. One evening, as we lingered in my backyard, the sun dipping below the horizon, he spoke softly, "You seem lonely sometimes." I found myself at a loss for words. I longed to reject the truth, to feign that all was well. Yet I found myself unable to do so, not alongside him. At times, I conceded. He nodded, then turned his gaze toward me, a blend of sorrow and comprehension reflected in his eyes. "You deserve more than just being someone's background character, Rachel." That phrase lingered in my thoughts, resonating as I prepared dinner, as I meticulously folded clothes, and during those solitary moments in the hushed house after the children had drifted off to sleep. It ignited a wave of introspection. Had I truly chosen this life, or merely settled into it? Mark sensed the change, albeit faintly. He was consumed by his work, engulfed in meetings, lost in an unending stream of emails and deadlines. He would inquire if all was well, but only as an afterthought. I confided in him about my weariness. He merely nodded, his attention drifting back to his phone. Noah, however, was different. He truly listened. He rendered me seen significant. I was adrift, uncertain of my actions, devoid of any real plans. I had no intentions of leaving, betraying, or causing ruin. I was merely adrift. And in his presence, I felt a sense of being discovered. Yet, amid the serene delight of our bond, I sensed I was treading a precarious line. A single miscalculation could unravel it all. I reassured myself that it was innocuous. It was merely friendship, a connection that breathed life back into my weary soul. Yet, beneath the surface, an unsettling truth lingered. I sensed that this innocence was destined to fade. The subsequent days unfolded in a haze of muted bewilderment. I became ensnared in a cycle of contemplation, scrutinizing my actions, their appearances, and their implications. Though I had not strayed from the path of conventional propriety, an unsettling disquiet lingered within me. Yet, a whisper within me sensed I was nearing a threshold from which retreat might be impossible. Gradually, I began to distance myself from Noah, deliberately crafting a chasm between us. I reassured myself that this was the wisest course of action. I found myself needing to shift my attention to Mark, to the children, to the life I had constructed. I believed that by channeling my energy into the daily rhythms, into my marriage, the emotions I harbored would dissipate like mist under the warmth of the sun. Yet, feelings do not simply vanish at will. In my exploration of space, I discovered that it doesn't merely dissolve connections. Rather, it can amplify them. Noah remained steadfast, not imposing his will. He maintained a respectful distance, his politeness unwavering. Yet, I sensed the shift in his demeanor. His waves had grown briefer, his smiles more subdued. Though his visits became less frequent, whenever our eyes met across the fence or from our porches, a silent understanding lingered in the air. We both sensed the void. At home, life carried on as it always had, seemingly unchanged. Mark continued to toil away, his exhaustion palpable, his focus ever elusive. Some nights, he took refuge in the guest room, citing back pain or a need for restorative rest. I chose not to contest his decision. We had acclimated to the distance. It had infiltrated our lives so gradually over the years that it nearly seemed customary. Yet it was anything but, not quite. The children, fortunately, stayed blissfully oblivious. They were still at an age where they could immerse themselves in their own small realms of assignments and weekend adventures. I maintained the facade, preparing their lunches, assisting with school projects, and offering my support from the sidelines at Sophie's soccer games and Lucas's piano recitals. Yet beneath the surface, I was coming apart. One evening, Mark returned home later than he typically did. The clock approached midnight, casting a soft glow in the dim room. I lounged on the couch, the book in my hands forgotten, the pages untouched for what felt like an eternity. He entered, the sound of keys clattering against the counter punctuating the silence, followed by a weary sigh that hung in the air. "Apologies, it's been a lengthy day." I nodded in understanding. "It seems you've experienced quite a few of those recently." He settled into his seat opposite me, his hands moving to his weary eyes. "I understand. It's been relentless. The new clients are truly a challenge." We lingered in silence for several moments. The distance between us felt vast, frigid, laden with unspoken words. "Do you ever feel like we're just roommates?" I asked abruptly, my voice softer than I had meant it to be. He glanced upward, taken aback. "What?" "It feels as though we're merely coexisting, moving through the motions." A frown creased his brow. "Where is this coming from?" "I don't know," I replied, though I did. I suppose I just missed the art of conversation, truly engaging in dialogue. He let out a deeper sigh, a weight pressing on his chest. "Rachel, I'm truly trying. The demands of work are suffocating. The children depend on us. We cannot afford to spend our evenings dissecting the intricacies of our marriage." I gazed at him, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though I was staring at a complete stranger. "I'm not seeking a seminar, Mark. What I desire is a conversation." He rose, moving back and forth. "What is it that you expect me to express? An apology for my fatigue? A suggestion to abandon my job and spend endless hours on the porch with you?" That remark hurt, not out of cruelty, but due to its dismissive nature. I wasn't seeking the world. I inquired about something. No, I responded gently. I simply wish to sense that you truly see me. For a fleeting moment, his expression wavered, caught in the delicate balance of guilt and defensiveness. Yet, rather than engage, he turned and left the room. That evening, I lay awake, gazing at the ceiling long after silence enveloped the house. My thoughts continually drifted back to Noah, to the way he would truly engage when I spoke. He never made me feel as though my requests were excessive. The following day, I carried on with my routine as if nothing had changed. Amidst the flurry of errands, the cleaning, and the preparation of dinner, I unexpectedly found myself outside in the late afternoon. There I was, trimming the bushes that lined the fence between our yards, a task that had not been part of my plan. That was the mantra I repeated in my mind. Yet, the moment I caught sight of Noah on his porch, lost in his world with headphones on and a sketchbook in hand, my heart skipped a beat. I paused for a moment, then raised my hand in a tentative wave. He glanced upward, a smile breaking across his face as he removed his headphones. "Hey, stranger." I returned the smile. "Greetings." He approached, halting a short distance from my position. "You've been hard to find." "I understand," I replied, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I just needed a moment to gather my thoughts. He nodded slowly in response. "Did it help?" "I can't say for certain." A lengthy silence lingered, not awkward, but brimming with unvoiced thoughts. "Would you like to take a walk?" he inquired abruptly. "Just around the corner, nothing too significant." I paused for a moment, then gave a nod.
All right.
We strolled in silence initially, the autumn air sharp and the sky adorned with the soft colors of early evening. Leaves crunched beneath our feet, and the world seemed to hold its breath, tranquil in a manner that facilitated contemplation. "You're not crazy, you know," he finally remarked. I gazed at him. For what purpose? For the sensation of being unseen. For the yearning of something beyond mere existence. I released a breath, its visibility lingering in the crisp air. At times, it feels as though I am positioned at the center of my existence, unnoticed by those around me. He paused in his stride, pivoting to meet my gaze. "I see you." The words lingered in the space that separated us. Unadorned, truthful, risky. I remained silent. I found myself unable to respond. A constriction gripped my throat, and a sting welled in my eyes. I averted my gaze, attempting to conceal the surge of emotion that rose within me, unbidden. He didn't push. He simply stood there beside me, quietly, offering something I hadn't experienced in years. Presence. That night, I perched on the edge of my bed, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't due to any wrongdoing on my part, but rather the painful awareness of my heart's wandering path, one I felt powerless to redirect. The weeks that followed were steeped in an unsettling tension. I attempted to steer clear of Noah once more, yet this time it seemed utterly unfeasible. The bond we shared had transcended ambiguity. It had become undeniably tangible. In attempting to suppress it, I only fueled its power. He never uttered a word out of line, never laid a hand on me, yet everything between us seemed like a delicate thread pulled taut, poised to break. One afternoon, he placed a book on my porch, a novel we had discussed in one of our earlier exchanges. Inside, there was a note. "In moments when the cacophony of life becomes overwhelming, one finds solace in silence." I found myself seated with a book resting on my lap, gazing at his script, acutely aware that the barriers I had so carefully constructed were disintegrating more swiftly than I could mend them. Thus, I returned to the pages of a journal, a practice I had long abandoned since my college days. Every ounce of my being spilled onto those pages. My confusion, my guilt, my longing, my fear. I chronicled the life I envisioned and the woman I had transformed into. Amidst the turmoil, a singular truth emerged. I found myself emotionally intertwined with someone who was not my husband. While I had not crossed the line into physical infidelity, in every significant aspect, I had ventured beyond the confines of my marriage. One evening, Mark and I shared a meal in a hushed atmosphere. The children were away at their grandparents' for the weekend, presenting a rare chance for us to reconnect. Yet, We found ourselves in two distinct realms, the soft clinking of silverware, the soul sound bridging the distance between us. Once I had finished clearing the dishes, I found myself at the sink, gazing out the window onto the street. It was then that I spotted Noah, strolling with his dog beneath the glow of the streetlights. He glanced up toward the house. Our gazes locked, and in that fleeting moment, I experienced it all. The potential, the remorse, the longing for a life that may forever elude me. I averted my eyes swiftly, heart racing, and clutched the counter until my knuckles blanched. A choice lay before me, one that would shape the course of what was to come. There would be no room for chance. Every action would be intentional. I found myself at a crossroads, pondering the identity I was about to embrace. I ascended the stairs and settled into a chair opposite Mark in the bedroom. He was absorbed in his phone, scrolling through emails. "I think we need to talk," I said. He gazed upward, weariness etched on his face. What occupied his thoughts?
Us.
Everything. He paused, then placed his phone aside.
All right.
I parted my lips to say something, yet the words eluded me for a moment. There was an overwhelming abundance, an excess of time, an excess of silence, an excess of everything that had accumulated between us. I finally confessed, I don't feel like I'm truly living. Instead, I feel as though I'm merely surviving, moving through the motions, and I don't believe I can endure it any longer. He gazed at me, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Are you suggesting that you wish to depart?" "I'm not sure," I replied candidly. "What I mean is that something must shift." He leaned back, exhaling gently. "You're not content." "No," I confessed, "and I doubt you are as well." The dialogue concluded, without conflict. There were no accusations, no slamming of doors. Two souls stood in silence, their gaze fixed on the void that lay between them, a realization dawning that it was indeed there. Aiden remained unspoken, for the moment. That would come in due time. At this moment, I had to delve into my own understanding before attempting to articulate it to others. Yet, one truth was undeniable. This tale, in its evolving form, had not reached its conclusion. Not just yet. The ensuing days were steeped in contemplation. I withdrew from both Mark and Aiden, not from resentment, but from a need for clarity. I found solace in solitude, wandering through the stillness of early mornings, seeking refuge in the hushed corners of the library, pouring my thoughts into my journal. For the first time in years, I confronted my own reflection with brutal honesty. I acknowledged the loneliness that had seeped into my life, the way the silence in my marriage had carved out a void within me. I recognized that Aiden had become a mirror, revealing the emptiness I felt, yet he was not the solution to all my questions. On a tranquil afternoon, I rapped softly on Aiden's door. His expression was one of surprise, yet he remained silent as I offered him a neatly folded letter. "Please read it later," I urged softly. "I require solitude to reconstruct my essence, not relying on others, but through my own efforts." Subsequently, I departed. Later that evening, Mark and I found ourselves seated at the kitchen table. I revealed the truth to him, omitting some details, but sharing enough. He absorbed my words. For once, he genuinely listened. For the first time in ages, we engaged in conversation. Not as mere acquaintances, but as two individuals contemplating the possibility of reconstructing a future together, if such a thing were even feasible. I did not select Aiden. I embraced healing. In that journey, I rediscovered who I truly am. A true infidelity story. It all started on a regular afternoon, one of those days when I came home from the gym feeling drained and in desperate need of a shower. The house was illa quietus. I walked in. I noticed that neither my mom nor my sister was around. It was just me, nothing unusual except that it had been like this for years now since my dad passed away 5 years ago. I'd grown accustomed to the house being quieter without him, but I didn't mind much. It was just how things were so, as usual. I headed straight for the bathroom, feeling the sweat from my workout starting to cling to my skin. But in my haste, I realized I hadn't grabbed any clothes to change into after my shower. I wasn't worried, though. No one was home. I thought, why bother? I'll be done in a few minutes, and they won't be back for a while. I dropped my clothes in the middle of the house and made my way to the bathroom. The hot water was refreshing, washing away the exhaustion from my workout. I spent a little longer than usual in the shower, savoring the peace. I wasn't rushing, thinking I had plenty of time to unwind, but little did I know time was about to take a strange turn. When I finally finished my shower and stepped out completely naked, I was caught completely off guard. I walked back into the living room expecting the house to be as quiet and empty as it had been when I arrived. Instead, there were my mom and sister sitting on the couch looking just as stunned as I was. The sight of them in the living room where I'd left my clothes only moments ago hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart stopped for a second. There we were, frozen in that awkward moment. I hadn't expected anyone to be home, and certainly not to walk in on them while I was totally naked. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. I could see the surprise in their eyes, and maybe even a little amusement. I couldn't form a single word. I grabbed my clothes in a frantic panic, feeling more embarrassed than I ever had, and dashed toward my room. My face burned red from the most awkward and embarrassing situation of my life. In a blur of panic, I locked the door behind me, trying to process what had just happened. My mind raced. How could I have been so careless? I was mortified, and though my family was understanding afterward, the embarrassment never fully faded. It's been about a week since that moment, and for a while I convinced myself that everything was fine. I told myself maybe they had forgotten or just moved past it after all. It was a one-time awkward situation, and life has a way of getting back to normal, but even though I tried to put it behind me, there was something lingering, something that didn't sit right. It felt like there was an unspoken tension in the air, a lingering presence, like a shadow that never fully left. And after seeing the way my sister acted around me lately, I started to wonder if they really had forgotten, or if maybe they hadn't. I was sitting in my room, lost in the virtual world of the video game I was playing. The sound of buttons clicking and the thrush of in-game action filled the space around me, offering a brief escape from the awkwardness that had been hanging over me. I wasn't thinking much about what had happened here earlier until I heard the door creak open. I turned to see my sister standing there, a mischievous grin on her face. She stepped into the room, and I gave her a quick smile, half expecting her to start talking about something completely unrelated like usual, but instead of just talking, she started to joke around with me, her laughter filling the air as she teased me about something silly, like she always did. It seemed innocent enough at first, just a playful banter we shared countless times over the years, but there was something different in the way she was acting now. She wasn't just joking or laughing with me. Her touch felt more frequent, more lingering. It was like she was trying to push some boundary I wasn't quite prepared for at first. Thought it was all part of the normal sibling dynamic. Maybe she was just being playful like we often were with each other growing up. We always had a lot of fun together, from harmless roughhousing to just sitting and laughing over inside jokes. It was the kind of bond that made us feel comfortable and connected. But as she got closer, her hand brushing lightly over my shoulder or back as she leaned in to say something, I started to feel a little uncomfortable. The touches weren't aggressive or inappropriate, but they felt more intentional, more deliberate than usual. Couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted since that day. Maybe I was just overthinking it. After all, it was still my sister, and we had always been close, but I couldn't ignore the small nagging feeling in the back of my mind that made me wonder if something was different now. Was imagining things, or was there something she was trying to express without saying outright? Her laughter continued as she playfully touched my arm and teased me about my gameplay, but the whole atmosphere had changed. The comfort and I had felt before seemed to be replaced with a strange unease I couldn't explain. I tried to focus on the game, but it was hard to ignore how her press felt more intense now, almost as she was trying to bring up something that neither of us had addressed. What's worse, I didn't know how to respond. Should I act as if everything was normal, like nothing had changed, or was it better to address the elephant in the room, even if it was uncomfortable? As the moments passed, I started to feel more self-conscious, more aware of every little touch, every glance. I couldn't help but wonder what was going on and whether this was just her being herself or if something deeper was at play. Anyway, I continued play my video game, deeply engrossed, my focus locked on the screen, oblivious to almost everything else around me. Out of nowhere, I felt her hand touch my thigh. I barely registered it. At first, I thought maybe it was just an accidental Touch, she had a habit of messing with me when I got too wrapped up in a game trying to get air action, but when it happened again, I felt a slight sense of unease growing. By the third time, it was undeniable. She was intentionally reaching over her hand, lingering in a way that didn't feel accidental at all. Finally, I pulled myself out of the game, realizing it needed to address it. Mia, stop, exclaimed, pushing away from the console and turning. To face her fully, my voice came out louder and sharper than
I'd
intended, and the words seemed to hang in the air. Her face shifted, her usual mischievous smile fading as silence settled between us. For the first time, I could see something changed in her expression, a mix of surprise, maybe even a hint of hurt. We were siblings after all, bound by a carefree, close bond that had always been rooted in trust and playfulness. But now standing there in that thick silence, I could feel a strange tension building, something unsettling. It felt like an invisible line had been crossed, and I suddenly found myself questioning everything about the moment. What's the matter? G finally asked, breaking the silence. Her smirk returned, but with an edge I hadn't seen before. Can't take a little teasing. Her tone held a subtle challenge, as if daring me to confront whatever had shifted between us. The lightness was gone from her eyes, replaced by something harder to read. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I faster. You have to forget what you saw that day, I said firmly, trying to cut through the awkwardness. I hoped those words would make her understand that we needed to leave certain things in the past, things that weren't meant to linger or change the way we saw each other. She stopped in her tracks, giving me a mock offended look, crossing her arms dramatically as she stared me down. The usual lightheartedness in her eyes was gone, replaced by a playful but determined glare. How could I stop? How could I forget what I saw? She teased, lifting an eyebrow with a smirk, tugging at the corner of her mouth. I've never seen bigger like that. This awesome. You have a big thing, and you're my brother. Don't you want to share it with me? Come and just let me try it already. I rolled my eyes, surprised, but she wasn't done. She clearly thought this through. Best. Besides, she added, tilting her head like she was about to deliver the final blow, Mom even said she wants to try it. And also, my father didn't have the size. Go ask her if you don't believe me. She looked so confident, throwing in her favorite tactic, Mom's approval. She knew I'd find it hard to argue with that. I ran over to my mom in shock, practically stumbling over my words. Mom, what on earth is she talking about? Did she say that? My voice trailed off, trying to process what I just heard. My mom looked at me, a bit taken aback, but still composed. She gave a little chuckle and said, well, you know, she's actually right. I'm 55 years old, and believe it or not, I've never seen size like this before either, until one day she finally came to me. Her voice was soft but filled with a quiet determination. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and sadness in her eyes and said, come on, we're your family, we love you, and we want you to be with us. Don't shut us out. She took a deep breath before continuing, it's been hard without your father. You know, he passed away 5 years ago, and I've been left to hold everything together on my own. I tried my best, but there are so many moments when I feel completely overwhelmed. Some days are just so lonely, and I could really use someone to lean on, someone who understands. I've missed you so much, and I know your father would have wanted us to stay close to support each other. She looked down for a moment, as if gathering the courage to go on, and then spoke again, her voice now tinged with a sense of urgency. And your sister, she's almost 23 now. She's young, but she's been struggling too. She's never really had and want to depend on no boyfriend, no close friend she can truly count on. She's just alone. Her voice so fast, she squeezed my hand. We're not asking for a lot. I promise you'll enjoy it. You'll feel that sense of belonging again. It's what we all need, and I believe it's what you need. To be looked at with a quiet intensity that made me feel like time had paused. And then, without any warning, she reached for the hem of my shirt. Her fingers were steady but quick, slipping beneath the fabric and lifting it up, and before I could even understand her intentions, my shirt was gone. Her movements were deliberate, yet there was a tenderness in them, as if she was acting on some impulse that she herself didn't entirely understand. I was frozen, my mind racing in an attempt to piece together what was happening, but it was as though my body had lost the ability to react. Every small gesture she made, her fingers brushing my skin, the way she tilted her head as she moved, seemed to carry an unspoken message that I was struggling to decipher. Then she began to unbutton her on shared her hands, moving slowly, almost carefully. Side button came undone. Her gaze never left mine, and I could feel my heart pounding, my breath caught somewhere between shock and intrigue. I didn't know what to say Or if there was anything I should say, I didn't make a single move, unable to break the spell that had taken over the room as she continued. A surreal atmosphere enveloped us, like we were both suspended in a place where words no longer had meaning, where actions spoke louder than anything we could possibly say. I wanted to ask her what was going on, wanted to understand the reason behind this sudden shift, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. All I could do was watch as she peeled away the last layers of clothing, and it felt like each movement was somehow slow and yet impossibly fast, as if time itself was I was still just trying to comprehend what was happening, to make sense of the emotions swirling in my head. Curiosity, disbelief, a touch of apprehension. It was all happening so quickly, yet every second felt like it stretched out, hanging in the air, leaving me in a state of wonder and confusion. Moment I laid eyes on them without any clothing, something changed in me entirely. It was as if the world paused for a beat, drawing my attention to every detail of their bare skin, the way it caught the light, the soft curves and lines that seemed to invite my touch. It wasn't just an impulse, it was a slow building need that I could feel in every fiber of my being, a craving that surprised even me. Thoughts of restraint began to blur, fading into the background as a more primal urge took center stage. In that instant, the only thing that seemed real was the space between us and the undeniable pull I felt toward them, a mind race filled with images of what it would feel like, the texture of their skin under my fingertips, the warmth that I could almost sense radiating from them. It was a magnetic draw that was both thrilling and consuming, leaving me feeling like I was on the edge of something I couldn't quite name but deeply yearned to experience. I felt my heart pounding faster, my breathing growing shallow, the desire to bridge that gap, to reach out, to touch the feel intensified. Every rational thought melted away, replaced by a single powerful longing that I had never experienced with such intensity before. The room around us seemed to fade into obscurity, leaving only the three of us in this charged moment. It wasn't just about the physical desire, it was something deeper, a connection that felt almost inevitable, as if every choice I'd made had led me right here to this moment. And in that space, all I could think about was a touch, the sensation, and the electric connection waiting to be sparked between us. Without a moment hesitation, we dove headfirst into fulfilling our three deepest desires, barely stopping to consider what might come of it. Each urge, each hidden wish felt like it had finally clawed its way to the surface, demanding attention. The excitement and freedom of acting on them were all-consuming, like an intoxicating rush that swept us away from any sense of caution or hesitation. It felt exhilarating, liberating, even to ignore the usual voices of reason, the caution whispers that might have otherwise held us back. We were caught in a whirlwind of powerful momentum that pushed us forward with each choice, no matter how reckless, seek decision, feeding the sense that we were unstoppable, untouchable. We were driven by a mix of excitement, impatience, and perhaps even a touch of defiance. After all, these desires were things we had fantasized about, endlessly imagining what life would be like if we dared to go after them with nothing to restrain us. And now it was all unfolding like a dream brought to life. But in that rush, we didn't consider the ripple effects that might be set in motion, their repercussions that might come back to confront us. The consequences were vague, distant notions, shadows we didn't want to acknowledge, much less confronted. Felt as though the future could wait. What mattered was seizing this fleeting sense of freedom, as if time itself might stop for us just long enough to let us indulge in that moment. Each action felt justified, even necessary, like a piece of ourselves that had been hidden was finally being set free, and so continued, driven only by the thrill of experiencing everything we had longed for, racing ahead with hearts wide open and minds shut tightly to the potential cost of our actions.